Everybody, welcome to Toxically Masculine Tuesday, wherever you may be on this beautiful blue-green Australian-shaped globe of ours. This is Real News Live. All right, what's going on here? I want Steve up here. I want me over there. I want the New American Media guys down there. How are we doing tonight, everybody? Welcome. This is a special debate special Toxically Masculine Tuesday. I'm your host, Mike Barra, Las Vegas, Nevada, joined as I always am by the regular members of the crew and a special guest, Brian Engelman, sitting in for Dr. Brooks Agnew tonight because Brooks is off doing the Brooks cruise. You know, Kiss has the Kiss cruise. Brooks has a Brooks cruise where he just gets the ladies just come after him, and you know he spends the whole week on his back. He's going to be gone for the next few weeks. Brooks is a busy guy. I'm joined tonight, as I often am, by the man to my immediate right, as always with the audio problems, but we're going to work with that. Steve Doran, the trail boss, traveling somewhere in Arkansas or something. Where the hell are you, Steve, and how you doing tonight?
No. I'm in Ohio. I'm on my way to Cleveland.
Cleveland
rocks, baby, and I'm on my way there. This is how dedicated I am. I am broadcasting live from the inside of my SUV.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Awesome stuff. And Steve, by the way, the microphone works great when you hold it up like that. So, all right, the other member of the regular crew, TV's Blake Wally, long-standing member, our intrepid cub reporter, TV's Blake Wally, has recently cut his hair, and of course, we're all envious of Blake's hair. Blake and the beard. Blake, I love the shirt. Boats and Hose. How you doing tonight, and what's on the agenda for you?
Doing well. It's great to be here on this historic debate night, and yeah, it's great to be with the crew. I'm going to be drinking some little Frontier whiskey, Bullet Bourbon.
Now, are you going to play any drinking games tonight, Blake? That's the issue. Are you going to play any drinking games?
It's pretty dangerous with the whiskey.
Every time she laughs, you got to do a shot.
Every time Kamala cackles, you got to take a drink. Every time she says abortion, you have to take a drink. She's going to say abortion about 50,000 times. And if she says, I'm talking here, you got to swig the whole bottle because she's going to be desperate to do that. Trump will just go, but come swallow. My mic is on. It's my time. I'm allowed to talk now. I don't think anything like that's going to happen, but we'll see. Also joined by the extra fourth member, the honorary member of the Toxically Masculine Tuesday team. We got to work on his testosterone levels, but he's doing pretty good. Brian Engelman from the Next Level News Show and the New American Media. How you doing, Brian, and what are you drinking?
Living the dream. Thanks for having me. This is some tequila. Had some wonderful fajitas this evening and had a margarita or two with it. So switching over to tequila and ginger beer, the Reed's ginger beer. It's a really nice addition. And I just want to remind everybody that on Thursdays at 5 p.m., Mike Barra and I, with an open invitation to Blake Wally always, and anyone else that wants to, we're doing Strictly Football, covering all the things that happen in the week of football. My team sucks. How's your team doing, Mike?
Who would have thought that Baker Mayfield would be better than Deshaun Watson? However, there is hope. There is hope, Ryan, because your quarterback has been accused once again of another sexual assault. And how much do you want to bet, speaking of conspiracy theories, that the owners of the Browns paid this BITCH to make these accusations? Because that way they can void Deshaun Watson's contract. The world is a corrupt, dirty place. Now, I don't know about Deshaun Watson. I will say this, and we'll save it for the Thursday football show. But I don't believe any of these stories. I don't believe any of these.
I think everybody's innocent unless proven guilty. But this is interesting. When they gave the 230 fully guaranteed contract, that really pissed off everybody.
Yeah.
Were they holding on to this in case everything went sideways so they could bail halfway through? Well, they're about halfway through, and he looked like trash. The whole team really looked unprepared, and that's on Coach Stefanski, and Andrew Berry made this happen, the general manager. So anyway, I digress. We'll get into that on Thursday, but it's a lot of fun setting that up with you. So you're not just talking Seahawks. I'm not just talking Browns.
We're going to talk about the whole league. Yeah, everything. Yeah. All right. And we'll do that. It could be worse. Your head coach could be Pete Carroll, so it could be a lot worse. Guys, just to let everybody know, we are going to be bringing the live streaming coverage of the debate when it happens. Oh, I guess I've got captions on. Maybe we'll need that for when Kamala cackles. So that will be part of the show at 6 o'clock. We're going to absolutely be joining in to listen in on what's going to happen. Okay, guys, so I want to set this up. Steve, I want to start with you. I don't know how closely you've been following the news this week. I hear through channels that Consuela Horace did not want to do this debate tonight. She had no interest in showing up for this. She wanted to come down with COVID, but they told her, you have to do this. I also understand that she's going to be mic'd up. They're going to have a microphone in her or a speaker in her ear to feed her the answers. We all know they already gave her the questions. So we already know she already knows what the questions are. She's going to have canned responses. My question is, do you think it's going to make a difference? I think this woman is so dumb that she's still going to end up looking like a dingbat. She's still going to cackle, and she's not going to do very well tonight. What do you think, and what do you feel? How do you feel about that?
Well, for the last 10 days, she's been in Hollywood, and she's had a Hollywood coach coaching her on how to make sincere facial expressions, not cackle, et cetera, along with being mic'd up and having an earphone, and she's still going to come off like a total buffoon, in my opinion.
Okay. Blake, these are rumors, but I'm obviously they're true. We all know how bad the Democrats cheat. Joe Biden, not only we established pretty clearly in 2020, you could see in his eye, he had like a contact lens, which enabled him to read what was supposed to be screens above the cameras, and the camera he was looking at, they actually overlaid the answers to the questions, everything he should say. He read the entire thing. And I remember during that debate, Trump kept looking at that screen and like, is he reading off that? Anyway, what do you think is going to happen tonight? What do you think? What's your preview? You're on right now. This is your pregame warm up. What are you going to tell everybody?
Well, she's got no excuses. They're going to have to put her out there. I think you're absolutely right. She would not want to be there unless she absolutely had to. She turned down the other ones. So now it's kind of like a home game for her with the moderators in her corner, if you will. So, I don't know if she got the questions, but she should be prepared for anything. They're not going to throw her any curveballs. They're not going to give her too hard of a time. So, yeah, now it's time for her to sit in the hot seat. We've been awaiting this moment for a while to see if she can actually do it. So let's hope Trump makes an example of her, and let's see the Democrats panic. But yeah, it's a big night, so I can't wait.
Yeah, Trump can be pretty effective on these things, especially when they're all trying to gang up on him. He just puts everybody down, Brian. But this isn't a 2016 Republican debate anymore. This is very stacked against him, and I think he has a tendency to talk a little bit too much in these debates and not focus on one major point. What do you think about how Trump's going to do tonight? I think the key thing for him is that he just lets her talk. And the more she talks, the dumber she's going to look, and he just keeps it really calm and really measured tonight. What do you think he's going to do?
Yeah, let's go back to the 2020 debates on Fox when they were pushing the Fine People hoax.
Yeah.
Remember that? And they were pushing the 51 intelligence officials have said that this has all the classic earmarks of Russian disinformation regarding the Hunter Biden laptop that was clearly showing evidence of bribery, blackmail, debauchery, criminal activity. It was the laptop from hell, and they hit it. Fox was complicit in trying to cover that up with the deep state. So I think in that debate, Trump talked too much. I think at this stage, I was saying this earlier, that less Trump is better. I said, you need to gather and assemble your team of Avengers and let them push the message of MAGA. Don't make this about Donald Trump. And look, what has he done in the past few weeks? We have Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, Elon Musk, former Democrat, RFK Jr., former Democrat, and Vivek Ramaswamy. You look at that and call that a brain trust? They're out there pushing the message of MAGA. I want Trump to just stay presidential. I want him to make his hard-hitting points, but I don't want him to get insulting. I don't want anything that even has a hint of misogyny. I just want it to be nice and simple, straightforward. Shut up and let her talk as much as possible and try to kick. My understanding is he can't ask her questions, so he has to wait he needs to find a way to pivot and push a question and a follow-up for her to follow up on and kind of keep it going, hitting the tennis ball over the net, saying, it's your turn. Please talk as much as possible. Look what happened when he let Biden talk as much as possible. Biden talked his way out of that position into retirement. So do more.
Yeah, and I mean, that's ridiculous. How can you call it a debate if you're not allowed to confront the other person directly? What the hell? How is that even a debate in America? That's ridiculous, because they know that he'll slaughter her if he does that. Okay, so I think she's going to just talk about abortion, abortion, abortion. If you took a drink every time she says a sip, every time she says abortion, you're going to be drunk in about 15 minutes tonight. In fact, we should keep an abortion count. I think I'll do that. I hear on this envelope in front of me. I'm going to keep an abortion count every time that word comes out of her mouth. Personally, I think, Steve, the best response to it is to say, look, the Supreme Court ruled that, as they should have, that this is a question to be decided by the states. So let's let the states decide whatever they think is best for the people of their state. Let the people in Utah decide, and I have no position on it, and there's not going to be any federal law. I think you should just keep it simple and say, and, by the way, anything that saves a life, anything, I don't believe in abortion personally, but the Constitution is really clear. What do you think about it, Steve? What do you think is going to happen on that issue tonight?
Well, again, it's not President Trump's decision whether abortion is legal or, it's a Supreme Court decision. He had nothing to do with it. Whether he can say personally, I don't agree with it, I don't like it, I don't condone it, but each state has a right to make their own laws to decide how it's going to go. Yeah,
I think that's probably right. Blake, I think abortion is going to be one of the things she's going to try to hammer on tonight. And he just needs to say, look, the Supreme Court's ruled that it's up to the states. Go fight your battles in the states. Let the people of each state decide. And I'm staying out of it. What do you think he ought to do on that issue?
No, I agree. That's a perfect way to disarm her on that issue. That is one of the things that they are going to. That's one of the things that they think they can win on. But he's not calling for some. They've demonized him like he's the guy, trying to ban it. And but it's none of that's true. And they keep playing this Project 2025 stuff. So it's not going to fly. So he's got to call her out on that. And then American people need to know the truth. So that would be a good one to dunk on her.
And again, I think he's not allowed to ask her a direct question. But I think one thing, Brian, he could say on that issue is he could just say, look, I am absolutely opposed to partial birth abortion, to abortion in the third trimester, and certainly to abortion after the baby is born. And there have been bills proposed that you can still kill the baby after it's born. I'm 100% morally opposed to all of those. I have no idea what my opponent thinks about that, but I would sure like to hear it. That's not asking a question. That's making a statement.
I like that.
What do you think he tries to pull something like that? And how do you think he should handle the issue?
No, that's clever. I bet you there are probably about 5 or 10 really strong, not a mnemonic device, I don't know what you call it, but like you just framed it there. And I'd be very curious to hear what my opponent thinks about it. You're not asking a question, but you've tossed a question out there. And there are ways, anytime you're getting interviewed, the key is understanding where they're trying to take you and knowing where you want to go. I know Trump is too smart to get caught up in this stuff, but I haven't really heard him offer the kill shot. And that's what the phrase that's often used. By the way, it's like when they say it's a bloodbath on Wall Street, we're not calling for violence, just like a kill shot. But
Right.
in a debate, the kill shot would just be, look, I don't want to have anything to do with you and your personal medical decisions. That's why it's between you and your state. If the ladies in your state decide to vote a particular way, that's how you are going to be governed. And look, most of the states, when it has come up, they decide to keep things mostly as they are and just put a couple limitations on it. If you're going to have one, you have it early, you get it out of the way. You don't do this after birth. You don't do it at 9 months. Like there are ghoulish things that get dangerously close to human sacrifice at the ass end of this stuff with Planned Parenthood and auctioning off these little baby parts. It gets weird. But I think if Trump were to say, I want the least input on you and your personal bodily autonomy, your medical decisions. That's why it's between you and your state. That's how the country's supposed to be. That's how legal scholars said that this issue should have been handled from the beginning, that it was bad case law, that it went this far to begin with. So I'm out of it. And I'm happy that I'm out of it and I have nothing to do with your personal medical decisions. And I'm happy to see that most states haven't gone draconian in any way to ban anything, really, other than some common sense. Don't do this 9 months in, do it after the birth, and don't, like just some common sense stuff like it used to be. It used to be safe, rare, and available. But now it's just like, you have parties and celebrate it. It's like, this is getting ghoulish.
Yeah, getting ghoulish, it's been ghoulish for quite a long time. Okay, we're almost up to debate time, so it's going to be starting pretty soon. Other issues, Steve, I mean, we now have, they're calling them Haitian immigrants and migrants. They're illegal fucking aliens, killing people's cats and dogs, cooking them and eating them, killing geese in parks. I feed the pigeons at the park I take Barkley to. Okay, if I find somebody doing that, I'm going to shoot him. Well, maybe not, but I'm going to want to shoot him. Do you think Trump should bring that up tonight? Like, this has gotten so insane. All these people you brought into this country illegally. No, we're not going to give them amnesty. And God damn it, we're going to get them out of here so they stop killing our cats and dogs. Do you think he ought to bring up the family pets tonight?
Absolutely. I mean, let's face reality. These people, about the only thing they don't do anymore is crap on their own feet, and they're probably doing that in private, but they're raping our American citizens. They're raping our little girls. They are beating up our elderly. They are robbing. They are breaking into homes. They are squatting into homes. They are killing cats and dogs. These people need to go.
Go. Yeah, I agree with that.
I'll tell you what. If I saw him killing one of my dogs, it would not be pretty.
No, it would not be.
I'll let Blake go first, but man, I got thoughts on this.
Okay, Brian, go ahead. Go ahead and shoot it, Brian.
No,
we got about 20 seconds.
You can ask Blake real quick, but like when I lived in Los Angeles, I was the cat father. 135 stray cats. We did trap, neuter, return. You trapped them, you spayed and neutered them, you treated them for any illnesses or conditions. You fostered as many that could get off of the streets. I loved those stray cats in that feral cat community. And I'll tell you what, you knew immediately if somebody stopped coming around. Crystal stopped coming around. Ray Charles stopped coming around. Morris stopped coming around. I can think of all of them, and I can pinpoint when they stopped. So if the residents of Springfield are reporting that some of their cats are going missing, believe them. They feed them every day. And if this is a fake story, tell me that picture of the guy walking around with the goose by the neck. Tell me why now that
it's not fake. There's new footage out there today. It's not fake, and this is the same thing. Democrats lie about something, and then that becomes the truth for the period when it's really the most intense, and then you find out a week later that they were right all along. Blake, you got about 20 seconds before we cut over to the debate coverage. Hit it.
Yeah, no, this is a great issue for Trump to absolutely hammer her on, is the immigration. There's a lot of angles to hit that from. With the Haitian thing, I'm not 100% if they're actually killing family pets per se.
They are.
But the local wildlife is in serious danger.
Yeah, they absolutely are. All right, we are going to slide over to the coverage, and let's listen in. And guys, by the way, anytime you want to make a comment, you just either raise your hand or just slip in. But let's make the comments quick so we don't, we can talk over the questions. We don't care about that. We care about the answers. Just get in, hit it quick if you have something to say. and we will just all be here to watch this. This ought to be the knockout blow for Donald Trump. It really ought to be. Let's see if he lands the punch.
Questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock.
Can we
That's
hear,
what they'll
can
be
we hear
seeing.
the
2
audio?
minutes for
Everybody hear the
rebuttals
audio?
and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications,
Okay,
or
and
responses.
everybody
Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to
the
speak.
audio.
No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for two candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald
Elevated
Trump.
by 6 inches. Foot. You gonna shake her hand? No.
Kamala Harris. What's up? Good to be.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and
At least we're not
thoughtful
going to have the
So
moment
let's get
where Al
started.
Gore tries.
I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often
President
asks
Trump
his
was
supporters,
elected.
are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Freudian slip.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American
Watch
people.
this, Steve.
And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy.
The answer to this,
My opponent, on the other hand,
I'm
his
still waiting
plan
for the
is to do what he has done before,
cut from 1992,
which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Word salad.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. and you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio.
There we
You look
go.
at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again, and even better.
We are going to get to immigration.
Strong.
Okay, quick mute. Thoughts real quick. Steve, Brian, Blake, hit me. Steve.
All right, I think you did a great job. It was a great response and totally blew her out of the water.
Brian, what'd you think?
Kamala danced around the issue. She didn't have anything to say. Word salad, no dressing. Trump feels presidential and focused.
Blake.
Keep hammering him. I never heard of this Trump sales tax. It's total BS.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, now she's trying to pivot to COVID. Okay, we're going to go back to the debate. Maybe I should pause it next time.
What
Yeah,
we
we can
have
do
done
that.
and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
Okay, that was a great answer. Sorry, let's let her finish. I don't know why she's responding.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan. And it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Say it.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down.
Okay, before we get to this, really quickly, what do you guys think of that sequence? Blake, Brian, Steve. Blake.
Yeah, it's ridiculous to say she doesn't have a plan. The economy was awesome in 2019. He had a great economy. It sucks under Kamala and Biden. So win on Trump on that one. I don't care what these Goldman Sachs, elite institutions, establishment, they all hate Trump and they want him to fail.
No. Brian.
16 Nobel laureates, blah, 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 blah. 51 intelligence officials, blah, 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 blah. Bullshit.
Yeah. Steve.
Total bullshit on Kamala's part. We all know, we lived through this. We know that Trump's economy was the best, that Biden did nothing but destroy this country, and she helped him do it. And she is a liar. And if anybody's attacking anybody, it's her.
I think the people watching that know it too. I think her snarky expressions. I think Trump's got to stay away from laughing at what she says. He's got to stay flat. He's got to stay toned. The other thing is I wish he would have said it, because I would have said it. Is you have your professors who've never worked a day in the private sector. I have my track record. Go back and look at what I did, and that's exactly what I'm going to do 4 years from now. Okay, let's go back to the debate and let it roll forward.
Down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having, on the short end of the stick, in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion.
Okay, real quick, what did you guys think of that? I don't think it was necessary for him to call her a Marxist. I think he should have left that on the table. But I thought, other than that, he slaughtered her on that answer, because she's just going on all this philosophical stuff about the new American century and all that shit. Nobody gives a shit about that. I can't pay for gas. Steve, am I wrong?
You're not wrong. But the other thing is, watch her head. After he responds, somebody is telling her what to say. And you can see her. Watch her head. She turns her head down to the side to listen to what they're telling her to say next. There's no doubt that she's mic'd.
We will watch that. Brian, what do you think about that exchange?
As the referee here, I'm going to allow it. I think she has been trained as a Marxist, just like Obama has been trained as a Marxist, just like the people who run BLM have been trained as Marxists. They are Marxists. It is a dirty word, and he needs to let everybody know that these are dangerous, stupid people with terrible backward policies that will ruin this country. I approve of him calling her a Marxist.
TV's Blake Wally.
Yeah, I also like that. You're going to force the American people to have that conversation. I think that's great. And these are not fresh candidates. We've had 4 years of each. So we know how the difference in the economies. Obviously, Trump wins.
All right. I don't know. I just think he could have cleaned up a little bit better on that one. But now I'm going to really watch what she says and does with her ears when he's talking. Let's see.
President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before. He said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact.
Okay, so wait a minute. That's totally out of line. She's not supposed to do that. That's a violation of everything that goes on here. He is not allowed to define the answer. He never said at all what she claims he said. That fucking bitch. Sorry. Let's go.
Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter, because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to, because, again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach.
Obama?
Look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Okay, I didn't think he did very well on that. I thought she did a little bit better. And what he should keep saying is not, he said, we're going to let the people decide. That's what he has to say. Brian, what do you think about how he did on that one?
Yeah, I've listened to Scott Adams talk about this quite a bit, and he's like, there's a kill shot out there, and it's just the answer that he's supposed to say is just, you want me completely out of your healthcare decisions, and that's exactly where we're at. The United States is a roughly, loosely knit conglomerate of 50 individual countries under the umbrella of a federal government called the United States. The states are essentially little countries inside of this country. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be in charge of your healthcare, and thanks to this process, I am the furthest thing from it. It's between you and the state that you choose to live in. Additionally, I can't stand that Kamala is still lying about Project 2025. Trump needs to, every single time that comes up, say, that's great that you're fixated on 2025. My plan is on my website. It's articulated clearly. It's called Project 47, Agenda 47.
Agenda 47.
My plan, and stop putting on me something that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah, Blake, what did you think of that last exchange?
Yeah, he really could have hammered her on like those 3 lies, and he did call out a bit of it because he did say there's exceptions, there's rape, incest, and what have you. 2025, obviously, like Brian said, is a false narrative that they keep pushing. There is no such thing that he's doing a Trump abortion ban. This is something that they talk about behind the scenes, but it is not there in real life, and he has no authority to do so. They keep trying to paint him out as a dictator. It's all BS, but he should have hammered that.
You didn't articulate it very well. Steve, you're back. What's up? What do you think?
Well, I mean, my opinion, as you know, first of all, it's not my body, my choice. It's a separate life. It's a separate body. I get so sick of hearing that stuff. And yes, they do abortions in the 9th month just prior to the baby being born. It's a cruel, horrible thing. You've got women on the street going, I've got 25 abortions and I want to get pregnant again and have 26. That is the kind of stuff that they are trying to stop. And so, states' rights over federal government. It's always been that, or it should have always been that way. It should have never been in the hands of the federal government.
No.
And it's up to the people in the state where you live.
And one more quick point there. Lee Harris just put a comment on the board that's interesting. It says she brought a woman's right to do what she wants to do with her body. But where was that thought when the Democrats were forcing jabs?
Yeah, well, again, another
Trump could have hit her with.
Another missed pot shot by Donald Trump on that one. All right, let's go.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion ban.
Ralph Northam.
Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia.
Ralph
The
Northam.
governor of Virginia said, we put the baby aside, and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were.
Any thoughts quickly on that last exchange? How that Trump recovered a little bit there. Steve?
Yeah, I think he covered pretty well. Again, the Democrats use lies. They constantly make stuff up to try to make him look bad. And then, as we just saw, one of the commentators are making comments, and they're supposed to keep their mouths shut to try to make him look bad. So we know exactly where they're trying to make this go.
Yeah. Blake?
Yeah, kind of a lost opportunity to really hit her with that abortion issue with some real jujitsu and get back at her. And, of course, disappointing by the moderators as Trump is calling them up. Please ask, because I want to hear her answer, too. I think everybody wants to hear that. Is she okay with late-term abortion? Because that's where it gets pretty disgusting for people.
Brian?
And by the way, they are doing late-term abortions right now today.
All over the place, yeah. Brian?
Yeah, on our show earlier today, I agree to disagree. Blake had a list of 26 questions he'd love to get answered from Kamala. And, right there were a couple opportunities, and she skated away from it. Look, it's the economy, stupid. It's the illegal alien invasion, stupid. Let's focus on those two.
Yeah. And one last thing on this. All he really had to say is, look, all I did was allow the people of this country to decide what they want in their own individual communities. Boom. That's a grand slam. All right, let's go back.
We're tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported.
She's going Southern accent.
And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country.
Because of you.
That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why?
Nice.
Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires.
Why?
And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
There's people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest.
51 intelligence officials said.
You talk about extreme. You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people, not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people
Bring that up.
who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration.
Okay, what did you think about that particular exchange? Brian, I think we've lost Steve again. Brian, you go first.
I mean, if you're going to be dropping the Cheneys and the Romneys and the McCains and all of those rhinos, I don't think they're making the point that they think they're making. 200 Republicans are voting for me. Yeah, they're called rhinos. Republicans in name only. They're deep state hacks. They're globalist traitors. Yes, that's why there was a civil war inside of the Republican Party. The rhinos had their asses handed to them. MAGA is in charge, and they've gone tail between their legs to the Democrats, the dirty deep state Democrats, like they've always been. Scooby-Doo masks are off. They belong there.
Yep. Okay, Blake, what do you think about that exchange?
Yeah, there was a lot to get into. She was dishonest about the border bill because that was full of pork. It was all going to Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan. Barely anything actually going to the border. That's why it got vetoed. It was full of poison pills. She lied about the crowd sizes. Yes, she does bust stuff on. She does have concerts, pre-crowds. No reason to go there. Yes, as Brian calls out, the neocon warmongers and the radical leftists, no one cares about those endorsements. I wouldn't want endorsement from Dick Cheney. That's awful. And she has no business talking about turnover rate because she has got like a 94% staff turnover. So
exactly.
Thank you, Blake. Yes,
exactly. He should have hit her on that. And the other thing I have to say about this too is that he needs to make a big deal here in a minute if he doesn't, or tomorrow at the very least, saying, I talked about people's pets being eaten by illegal aliens. It is happening. Here's the proof. And she laughed about it. She claims she's so compassionate, and she laughed about people's beloved pets being eaten by illegal aliens that she led into the country. That would be a real knockout punch. Let's go back.
It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
So
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference,
Not going to go anywhere.
has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear.
Yeah,
where
clear
each
you
person
weaponize the
stands
Justice
on
Department.
the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same
Avalon.
old tired rhetoric and address
You're not saying
the
anything
needs of
works
the
out.
American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support
Housing?
our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries.
Housing?
But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
Good question.
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother.
She said that twice already.
Who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. You don't mind.
He's an honor.
Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get to.
environment that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
No.
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just ask you,
David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching
might
it
ask
unfold
her.
on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches.
Oh my God.
Spewing anti-Semitic hate.
Oh,
And
replacing the
what did
population.
the president then at the time say? There were fine people
Oh
on
my
each side.
God.
Let's
You went
remember
there.
Out of
that
her
when
mind,
it
she
came
did
to the
that.
Proud Boys, a militia. The president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page.
On
And
Harris
if that was a
Biden.
bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is
Oh,
not to
she's
his
the
liking.
dumbest person I've ever seen.
You know what?
Let's
What
turn
Trump
the
should
page on
say
this.
right here.
Let's
Can we
not
pause
go
it?
back. Let's chart
Well,
a
hang on.
course
What he should say right
for the
here.
future.
What he should say right here when they come back to him, and he probably won't, is just you keep fact checking me. Are you going to fact check her on the Charlottesville lie she just told? And then just say nothing, and then just stare at them. The very fine people hoax. You going to fact check her on that? No, I mean, this is ridiculous. Anyway, go ahead, Brian, Blake. Any thoughts?
I just can't believe she had the audacity to repeat the fine people hoax. It never happened. He never said to drink bleach. He never called Nazis fine people. It's always been a hoax, and she just repeated that. I can't believe she's still doing that. She's talking about tiki torches and going back a minute ago about the price of housing. She's the one that pumped this country full of 15 to 20 million illegal alien invaders, raising the price of housing for everyone. This is a gaslighting masterclass.
Yep. All right, back to it.
And not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this, you talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide.
Yeah.
In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically.
It was a blowout.
There's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about it. An election is fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you.
Yes.
We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by
like
President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences.
Yes.
One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States.
No, you haven't.
World leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election.
No.
It leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or
it's not going to sell. People already know what Trump is. They've already had 4 years of him, and it was better than your 4 years.
That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes.
That's true.
They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I
up.
think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization,
Why is she so up in her nose?
slaughtered
She did
1,200
so
Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself.
Like Obama?
It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un.
Love letters?
And it is absolutely well known that
Barry?
these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC
They
News
use that
presidential
phrase
debate
like
from the
5
National
times.
Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
They keep saying that. We have a lot more to get to. They keep cutting stuff off.
But we only have a lot more to get to when President Trump is talking. Okay, quick thoughts on this right now, gentlemen. What do you think? Quickly, Brian.
Let me go to Blake first. Go. Blake.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't terribly impressed with some of the foreign policy stuff, and to say that Kamala's hates Israel. She's married to a Jewish man, and she's going to go along with the war machine no matter what. So I thought he came off badly on that particular issue, as well as being too much of a tough guy. I wouldn't work about the Nord Stream pipelines in Russia, Ukraine. There are some issues that I have with that. I don't like the fact that Kamala, got to dodge all the questions. So many times he's brought up the horrible immigration policy, and she's allowed to, dance on the issues. And then keeps, bringing up all the hoaxes, and of course nobody calls her out on that. So she's holding in there better than I thought.
Well, the thing is, most of her answers, they're all rehearsed because she obviously got the questions ahead of time. We all know that, and she's probably got a thing in her ear. But you notice you're not ever seeing her right ear the entire show. But the thing is that I don't think she gains any traction because she's just repeating all the lies that have been exposed for the last 4 or 5 years. So, Brian, how do you think he's done on responding to her directly on some of these issues? I mean, I don't think he should be so defensive about his record. I think he should just be saying, "Hey, look, this is what I did when I was president. Everybody knows how I'm going to govern. Stop trying to pretend like people don't know who I am." I don't know. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, you're right. I think Trump is the peace president, and he's worked hard to get negotiated deals done to just stop bringing people home in body bags. And that's an admirable thing when you're going up against the military industrial complex that feeds itself off of the blood of the fallen. They will promote wars. They don't care how many people are sacrificed at the altar of their money making machine. And I appreciate that Trump has always fought for peace. I mean, he calls him a lover of dictators or something. It's like, yeah, he goes to Kim Jong-un and goes, hey, pal, you know the deep state's trying to frame you for a nuclear attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you work with me, maybe you can avoid having your entire country turn into a glass factory, because Victoria Nuland, Barack Hussein Obama, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris, they are setting you up for a fall. I don't really understand what they're going for there, because it was so much better under Trump leadership.
Well, that's the thing. And the other thing is, look, these talking points that she's spewing out are not going to sell with independents. They haven't sold with independents yet. They're not going to sell just because of tonight. They're just repeating the same old lies and bullshit that just don't stick. And the other thing is that what I've seen on Twitter from my Twitter feed, granted it's probably more conservative, is that the story right now is it's 3 against 1. And that's the big story right now. And at ABC is a joke. We'll see how that spins as time goes on.
I think Trump's holding his own. I think Kamala's doing better than I expected. I think Trump's staying even keel. He's not going too far overboard. I think they're just kind of punching to a draw, which I suppose gives Kamala a little bit of a boost, but she still sucks.
No, if they punch to a draw, Trump wins because he's got the lead right now by 5 or 7 points. The other thing is that she hates Israel. I wish he hadn't quite put it that way. I would have said she doesn't support Israel, is how I would have put it. She wouldn't even meet with President Netanyahu, and I think he should have. He hit that once. He should have hit it 2 or 3 times before he finished that answer.
Yeah, he eventually got to the not meeting with Netanyahu in the middle of a Gaza war that everybody's screaming, "Please, can we stop this?"
Right.
She's hanging out with a sorority.
And I think that was something he should have emphasized. A little more. All right.
People being killed by the
concerts. I'm Maggie Burley. You're streaming ABC News Live.
What does it take to be the most watched newscast in America?
Not much.
War in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, He must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interests for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
You are.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Eat you for
Vice
lunch?
President Harris, thank you. We've
Like
heard
a
from both
dog
of you on
in
Ukraine
Springfield?
tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
No, give Trump the mic.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow,
Please.
much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one.
Hello.
When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should.
He asked if you had met
As
Putin.
a leader upholding
Asked if you had
international
met Putin.
rules and
Yeah, I mean,
norms.
you met
As a
Zelensky,
leader
not Putin.
who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, They
That makes no
blew
sense.
it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
She
I
brought it
don't
up.
care.
Democrats won't stop
I don't
talking
care.
about it. That's why.
You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings. And he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
Half black, by the way.
And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
We have different
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country.
Amen.
There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had. A horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans.
We know more about business than Donald Trump.
And let's compare the plans. I have a plan
It's still going, guys.
to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan.
Why haven't you done it for the last 4 years?
Allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page and move forward.
Thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
One more time.
To defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank
That's
you, Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond.
President Trump,
No, the former president has said something twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
Getting
going
to
to move on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said.
Trump, this
You
is
gotta
now your
respond.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the
she got
Affordable Care
steamrolled.
Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish
about
that.
it, too.
You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain
60
who
times.
you have disparaged
The great
as
McCain.
being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night,
Great.
walked
John.
onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate.
See, this is a point that Trump should have actually made during the healthcare question. He should have said, I had a plan. We were ready to implement it. John McCain, a rhino who, betrayed his party and the American people and voted against it, or we'd have that plan right now. He should have preempted this. It feels like he's missing a lot of opportunities here, which is my problem with Trump most of the time.
But half of it, Mike, is that he's trying not to get in his own way. He's really being cognizant to not come off too aggressive, too abrasive, too insulting, but he's leaving some points on the table as well. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I'm happy he's not Trump turned up to 11 like in Spinal Tap.
Yeah. All right.
Ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Fastest
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
She made
of...
a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump.
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Wow, okay. All right. We're a little behind. Let's fast forward.
The ABC News presidential debate.
Reporting from the floor of the Republican
For our country.
I'm seeing like
It doesn't get any more cutting edge than this.
well, no, it's kind of even.
Reporting from the floor of the Republican National Convention, I'm Rachel Scott. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future,
No, it's
and the
not.
other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward.
All you did was ask him about.
But we're not going
All we
back.
did.
And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including
fucking wars.
respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
We left our
I'll
weapons
tell
in
you, I
Afghanistan.
started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Why didn't you invest
Vice
in it?
President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like We're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
My God, thank God that's over. Okay, that was exhausting. That was exhausting. I want to wrap it up. For the safety of the world, Trump needs to win, although I do believe it will be fixed again. They will try to fix it. I don't know if they can this time. Who in the hell in the U.S. would vote for Harris? I don't know. Keir Starmer is your prime minister, Adam, so you explain that to me. I don't get that either. All right, boys, yeah, my son isn't talking to me right now because I support Trump. Okay, he'll come back. He'll wake up like everybody else says. All right. My evaluation is that, Trump had chances to land some heavy blows, and he didn't. He should have had some lines prepared on some of the things he knew they would ask him about. She says, he wants to look behind. The answer to that is simple. They keep asking me about stuff from 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So I'm answering the questions they're asking me. I also thought, look, all she had was platitudes and the same talking points that she and the Democrats have used for years and years and years. Tax cuts for the rich. None of that shit is going to play with anybody. In terms of temperament, I thought he was okay. I thought he was fine. Everybody knows who Donald Trump is. They all know that they all know what they're going to get when they vote for Donald Trump because they got it for 4 years. I don't think temperament, her snarky little looks, all that does is piss off every man who looks at it. Because let's face it, the dudes are like, that's exactly what my ex-wife used to do when I ask her to have sex or something. That is not going to help her. I don't agree that she did better than I expected. I expected her to be programmed and rehearsed, and everything she did was programmed and rehearsed. And, I don't think she even once caught him off guard and made him uncomfortable, whereas he did 3, 4, 5 times. So I don't know who won the debate. I just don't think it moved the needle at all. Blake, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's some good analysis. I mean, I agree with you that maybe he wasn't, overly prepared. I kind of wonder maybe if J.D. Vance was in the ring, maybe we'd have a different result and would have hit her hard on some of those issues where he could have slammed the door. Yeah, he wasn't strong on foreign policy, healthcare.
Sorry, not to interrupt you, but I am interrupting you. But do people really give a shit about foreign policy other than let's end the wars right now? I think there's so many troubles at home. Do they care? Go ahead and finish your notes. But what do you think? Do they care that much about it right now?
I mean, the Ukraine thing is obviously a huge deal. Probably not. I mean, the Afghanistan is a great issue for him to win on. So he did, get some shots in there, and she didn't really get to answer much. Of course, he brought the entertainment factor. He did have the highlights. He had some of the good zingers of the night. And to be fair to Kamala, as much as I don't like her, she didn't beat herself in this. She was very composed, but she did dance and dodge and, pushed a lot of the debunked hoaxes. I don't believe anything she says. So, Trump is right that she's in office right now. Why isn't she doing some of the things she's talking about? So we do know what Trump was in those 4 years. So we have a sample of both. I liked my life a lot better under Trump. Don't like this under Kamala, and I don't look forward to another 4 years of this.
I think that was a great point, but he should have been saying that all along. Well, you have a plan to solve this problem. What's been your plan the last 4 years? You created the problem. That's what he should have been hitting on over and over and over again. Brian, your thoughts? You're muted.
Muted.
Thank you. I think I'm back now. I think it was a draw, but Trump being up, like you said, Mike, 5 to 7 points. I'll call it 7 to 15 points. Trump is up by a landslide. Don't let this, it's 49-51. No, it's not. No, it's not. You didn't live through the 3.5 last years of hell. The people begging to be unburdened by the Biden situation. Kamala can't divorce herself. The eggs are scrambled. She is attached to Joe Biden forever. What we've seen in the past 3.5 years, either we want another 4 years of that, or we want to go back to what it was before COVID was unleashed on the world. And arguably, when Trump was president, things were much better for America. It was better in Gaza. Things were better in Ukraine. Things were better in Taiwan. Things were better all across the globe. I didn't see a lot of knockout punches, not a lot of great one-liners, not a lot of great moments that could be clipped and replayed tomorrow for social media purposes of, hey, check out the debate. Here are the zingers. There weren't a lot of zingers. It was kind of 6 punches absorbed and 6 punches thrown. So in one way, I'd say Kamala won because she didn't melt down. I expected her to melt down. I thought she was completely incompetent, but she was well coached. Trump, like you said, Mike, he left plenty of opportunities on the table, but he didn't lose. By no estimation did he lose.
No.
At the first, he fought to a draw, and when you're up by 7 to 15 points, stay at a draw. You got this in the bag.
And when it's 3-1 against you, when it's 3-1 against you, I think a draw is pretty solid. But I was hoping she would crack up or be drunk or something like that. She didn't give us any of that juicy stuff. But in the end, I just kind of doubt this moves the needle at all. We shall see. Look, the thing is that people are going to say, oh, well, she could be taken more seriously now because she stood on the debate stage and went toe to toe. But if everything she says is a lie and people know it's a lie, it's not going to really make a difference, I don't think. So get ready for the spin. By the time we're back here next Tuesday, they're going to be telling us Kamala Harris has a big lead after this incredible debate performance. It's going to be bullshit. Pay attention to the real pollsters who really know what's going on. Any thoughts on her wearing an earpiece in her right ear? I've seen a lot of comments, and I saw there was pasted over her ear. It that did not move the whole time. No, the right ear. Unfortunately, they did a good job covering it up, much better than they did Joe Biden's earpiece last year, in 2020, the last election cycle. Any other final thoughts, guys? I am wiped. I got 2 shows to do tomorrow. I just want to get out of here, get some dinner, and go to bed.
It's all good. Hit it, Brian. No, I'm good.
All right.
Or you were pointing at me. I thought you were waiting because you had a point to make.
No, I was giving you the first crack at it.
No. I'm good. I'm tapped too. It was a long night. I'm glad it happened. Hoping for a different result, but I think, like you said, it's a draw, and then we'll see what the independents and the libertarians and the other people, what they actually think as neutral observers, perhaps. That might move the needle a little bit, but everybody else, I think, is going to stick with their same person. Yeah, there's people trying to spin that Trump looked old and tired. That's ridiculous. The guy has more energy than she does, and she's 30 years younger or something like that. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for being here. Big crowd tonight, actually. We had a bigger crowd than we normally have. I'm sorry, guys, I completely skipped over. The question was, have you met Putin? She completely ignored that. You guys over on Rumble, thanks for being here. Appreciate each and every one of you. I will be back tomorrow with Real News Live with Mike and Jen. It's a Tell the Truth Wednesday. We'll ask Jen who the Angels think won the debate tonight. I love you guys. I'll see you on Whiskey and Wisdom tomorrow night. And then me and Brian on Thursday for Strictly Football. We're going to talk about football. It'll be a tremendous relief after this. I would imagine talking about Deshaun Watson is going to be a relief for you
Brian.
Don't do that to me this evening. I'm already exhausted and bitter.
And Friday, I'm interviewing Sean Kenny, who played scarred Captain Pike in the Star Trek episode The Menagerie 60 years ago. He's still around. He's still alive. He's a great guy. And he has had many other acting jobs. He also played an ensign. He was going to be the new navigator of the Starship Enterprise until the network came in and told Gene Roddenberry he had to put a Russian in the cast. So Sean, we're going to talk about some new projects he has going that he's funding, and we'll show you what's going on with that. So I still got a busy week going. I'm only halfway through it. Not even halfway through it. Love you guys. Thanks, Blake. Thanks, Brian. Also, our thanks to Steve Doran for his input. And we'll talk. It'll be old news by next week, but we'll talk about it in some abstract way. Thanks for being here. Good night, everybody.